will continue to look for ways to engage, but the first priority is to make sure that there is a ceasefire and that we set up the conditions for a lasting peace.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was among the world leaders who visited Kyiv today in a show of solidarity with Ukraine. Good evening. The meeting comes 3 years to the day since Russia began its invasion of Ukraine.
There is growing concern about the future of the war as the Trump administration works more closely with Russia. CTV's Adrian Gabriel has more from Kyiv.
I love Canada.
A proclamation of affection, though on day 1096 of Russia's invasion, pleasantries took a back seat to the deadly threat facing Ukraine, Europe, and democratic world order.
It's not just about Ukraine. It's about the rules and the values and the principles of sovereignty, of independence, of territorial integrity that protects every country in the world.
At the table, leaders from across Europe echoed a grave concern that their country may be next if Russia's show of force on Ukrainian soil is legitimized by Western democracies.
The Ukraine is fighting the fight also for Europe and Nordics and Baltics, everybody. Also United States, because Iran, North Korea, everybody would assess that they can do whatever they want.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau announcing that Canada will send $5 billion in aid to Ukraine using funds seized from Russian assets, as well as additional infantry and armored combat vehicles, while keeping the door open to possible Canadian troops on the ground in Ukraine as part of any future peace deal.
Everything is on the table because we need to make sure that might no longer makes right in this world.
Earlier in the day, American President Donald Trump joined a call with Zelensky, Trudeau, and other G7 leaders as fears mount that the new U.S. administration could pull their military support for Ukraine.
In the past 2 weeks, when we've seen a shift in the transatlantic partnership, we have to wake up to a new reality. And then the question is, how do we get skin in the game?
There are also multiple concerns raised about Ukraine possibly being forced into what they call an unjust peace deal. Now, this all took place today under the constant threat from above of a drone or rocket attack. The building behind me was hit just a week ago. One man was killed. Among the injured, a 9-year-old girl. Adrian Gabriel, CTV News, Kyiv, Ukraine.
Closer to home, people are working hard to support the war effort in Ukraine.
In Toronto, work's being done to supply Ukrainians with weapons and supplies. CTV's Sean Leathong spoke with those involved and joins us live with more details. Sean.
Well, Nathan and Michelle, I toured a factory today that has hired 250 Ukrainian refugees, people who came here after the war looking for some way to help, and they're sending armored personnel vehicles back to the war effort. Inside this Brampton warehouse, Ukrainian refugee Volodymyr Mosayev is welding a vehicle that will help fight the war. Having fled his home when Russia invaded, he's been working here ever since. He says, "We couldn't believe that it would be so long, just as we couldn't believe that Russia would invade because they're our neighbor." Mosayev is one of 250 Ukrainians working at Rochelle Smart Armored Vehicles, a company building vehicles to send to the front lines. As fighting in Ukraine continues today on the 3rd anniversary of Russia's invasion, many who fled can't believe that they're still here.
You never know when the missile will hit.
Anastasia Davydenko was living in Kyiv when war broke out. Soon, the war came to her neighborhood.
It was bombed that time, and when one of the missiles hit the building nearby, we decided that we should start and go out of Kyiv.
Her husband went to Poland while Anastasia came to Canada and is working as a purchasing manager. Since war began in Ukraine, Rochelle has sent 1,600 armored personnel carriers to the front lines with orders from Canada, the European Union, and the United States. Many here in Brampton are eager to do their part.
What they find in here is like not just a job. This is actually a mission to save Ukrainian and to do something for the Ukrainian.
Alexander Kyiv came to Canada 2 days before the invasion. A mechanical assembler by trade, he says finding work here feels like he's helping back home. He says he hopes that someday he'll return to Ukraine and build the same vehicles there. But while some are optimistic about the future, Anastasia Davydenko says she thinks the war will only continue.
I don't believe that Russia wants peace.
As she's fearful that any peace will only be temporary. Anastasia Davydenko has said that if there is a temporary peace, she thinks that Russia would only use it to reinforce and invade later. Reporting live, I'm Sean Leithong. Michelle, send it back to you.
Thank you, Sean. And still to come, Liberal leadership candidates square off in the first of two debates this evening. We'll have a preview of the events a little later in the newscast.
Cleanup efforts are ongoing following the recent snowstorms which hit the city.
Now fingers are being pointed at the TTC over its response to all the winter weather. CTV's Beth McDonnell has been following the story. She joins us live with more. Beth.
Michelle, there was an urgent motion at the TTC board meeting to make the system more prepared and responsive in extreme weather. When it comes to snow clearing overall over the next 10 days, Mayor Chow says it's time to speed it up with all hands on deck. From snow-covered sidewalks on the way to the bus or streetcar, to ice-covered subway tracks and a whole lot of delays. Two members of City Council are pushing to make the TTC run smoother when there's heavy snow.
I don't believe that Torontonians should have to climb a mountain of snow when they're simply trying to get to their TTC stop.
At the TTC's board meeting today, an emergency motion by Josh Matlow, seconded by Jamal Myers, calls for improvements clearing open air sections of Line 1 and Line 2. Better standards to make surface stops accessible and steeper fines for motorists blocking TTC vehicles from moving.
The goal is simple: reduce delays, improve service, and keep people moving safely no matter the weather. The
motion is one reaction to politicians' growing frustration and finger-pointing about who's responsible for the substandard cleanup more than a week after 50-plus centimeters of snow blanketed the city.
There are many, many questions. What has gone wrong here?
Paula Fletcher has been fielding complaints from people with mobility devices to sidewalk issues to an unplowed road with a fire station. She's concerned with the single-sourced contract awarded in 2021, investigated by the Auditor General 2 years later.
While we were out of the building, so-called, under COVID, staff also gave away the penalty clause. So the city is unable to put penalties on the contractors for their poor performance, is my understanding.
Meanwhile, Diane Sachs believes condo corporations can play a proactive role with the sidewalks.
They haven't done a darn thing, and that's because the previous council amended the bylaw to say that anytime there's more than 2 centimeters of snow, the commercial property owners don't have to do anything. I think that's a terrible mistake.
After wanting to see how the job went, Mayor Olivia Chow now believes it's time to ensure sidewalks get done and snow clearing speeds up.
In my personal observation, in the number of calls into my office, what I've been hearing from the councillors, what I'm hearing on the street, people are getting hurt, being injured, they can't get out. It is not working well.
Promising a public letter tomorrow outlining the steps being taken to review contracts and ramp up the cleanup. The emergency TTC motion passed this afternoon, which means staff need to report back on actions later this year. Mayor Chow says with the snow clearing, she's asking staff to speed it up where possible, especially when it comes to the sidewalks, and she's asking police to help tow vehicles blocking the streetcars. Reporting live, I'm Beth McDonnell. Michelle and Nathan, back to you.
Thank you, Beth. The city says it's ready to respond to any flooding from melting snow. Officials say snow removal across the city will help reduce the volume of melting snow, which could add to potential flooding. They say catch basins in areas prone to flooding will be inspected and cleared. Equipment and crews will also be ready at strategic locations.
So much snow there. Weird to think about it all melting. No doubt you've noticed, though, it has warmed up. It is mild out there. Temperatures we have not seen in a long while. These mounds of snow thawing out. And while it is slushy and messy, kind of feels nice not to be absolutely frozen when you walk outside. Lindsay Morrison is here with a look at the current conditions. Some nice temperatures, Lindsay.
Very nice, Michelle. It feels nice, but it also feels quite windy out there. That's contributing to our warm-up. I'll step aside so you can see here the current temperature. It's 5 degrees in Toronto, still 8, though, in Niagara Falls. And Hamilton made it to a daytime high of 9 earlier this afternoon. 7 at Pearson, 8 degrees downtown Toronto. Of course, these winds that we've been dealing with all day long, a big big reason why. Coming out of the southwest, sustained around 20 kilometers per hour, gusting now around 30 in Toronto, just starting to ease, but they were quite breezy earlier on. All is looking pretty clear on the satellite and radar. Dry, I should say. We do have some cloud, and we are anticipating some patchy fog through the night tonight, but we remain above seasonal and above freezing through the overnight hours. We're going to take you through your forecast for the week ahead coming up. For now, Nathan, I'll send it over to you.
Thank you, Lindsay. A note for commuters, there are early closures on a stretch of Line 1 for subway riders to keep in mind this week. Trains will stop running between Bloor-Yonge and Osgoode stations at 11 p.m. each night until Friday. The stoppage is to accommodate track work in the area. Shuttle buses will run until the end of service at 2 a.m. The TTC says staff will be available at all stations between Bloor-Yonge and Osgoode to assist customers. We turn now to the race to be Ontario's next premier. PC leader Doug Ford has released his full platform days before voters head to the polls.
The party leaders made stops across the province today, pushing their vision for Ontario's future. For more, we're joined live by CTV's Queen's Park Bureau Chief Siobhan Morris. Siobhan, this is the last stretch.
This is the last stretch, and now we have all four major parties out with full platforms, though there are some gaps in the math. The Progressive Conservatives' newly unveiled platform packs $40 billion in new spending.
Our plan to protect Ontario will build our economy, diversify our trade, and make our province the most competitive place in the G7 to invest.
There are new to the campaign trail promises for a $5 billion fund to respond to tariffs, $705 million to grow STEM and skilled trades training, and a callback to Buck-a-Beer, a vow to eliminate the minimum price of alcohol, designed to keep people from over-consuming.
That's the biggest joke I've ever heard. They don't do it in Alberta. They don't do it in Quebec. So why do we have to have a base?
The platform math incomplete, with no price tag for big promises like a Highway 401 tunnel and a concession from Doug Ford.
You know, if the tariffs hit us, yes, we won't be able to balance.
In Ottawa, asked if she'd stay on as Liberal leader if she doesn't win her seat.
I'm not conceding anything. We're here to win, and I'm feeling really good about this race.
Bonnie Crombie took aim at an off-the-cuff remark Ford made Sunday about ER wait times.
You got a little scrape on your knee or whatever, they should be at a clinic down the street.
I don't know what choice people have. You have deliberately underfunded our healthcare system.
Thank you so much. It's something the NDP leader also picked up on at a stop in Windsor, quipping that Ford should go to medical school if he wants to give medical advice.
Because that is an extremely irresponsible thing to tell the people of Ontario, especially at a time when so many people do not have a family doctor.
Campaigning in Parry Sound, Muskoka, the Green leader calls Ford's preoccupation with the 401 tunnel in Ontario Place unfair.
When right here in Bracebridge, people are looking at roads and bridges that the municipality is struggling to keep open. So many people without access to a family doctor.
Not mentioned in the PC platform is their previous pledge to build 1.5 million homes by 2031. Doug Ford says he is still committed to that goal, even though Ontario has missed all the benchmarks along the way. Reporting live from Queen's Park, I'm Siobhan Morris. Michelle, back to you.
Thank you, Siobhan. Meantime, data indicates fewer voters took advantage of advanced polls this month compared to the last provincial election. More than 678,000 people cast their ballot over 3 days of advanced polling, which represents just over 6% of eligible voters in Ontario. In 2022, more than 1 million people voted, but it was over 10 days. There were more advanced voting days, representing nearly 10% of eligible voters.
The Daily Nanos research poll for CTV News shows the PC party maintaining its lead over the Liberals. The PCs are leading with 44% support, followed by the Liberals at 29%. The NDP is in third with just under 20% support, while the Greens have a little less than 5%. Meanwhile, Doug Ford remains Ontarians' preferred premier with just over 39% support. He's followed in order by Bonnie Crombie, Marit Stiles, and Mike Schreiner.
There's some really interesting things that are happening beneath the surface. For example, in Eastern Ontario, the New Democrats are now moving into second place in Eastern Ontario. Probably speaks to why Marit Stiles and Bonnie Crombie both in Ottawa on the weekend. And, you know, perhaps it'll be a good weekend for the New Democrats in the city of Ottawa. But, you know, beyond that, the reality is that, you know, across all those regions, including Eastern Ontario, Progressive Conservatives are leading, with the exception of Toronto, of course, where Bonnie Crombie is still firmly in first place.
And Nano's polling indicates the NDP are viewed most favorably when it comes to building affordable housing. 28% of Ontarians believe the NDP would create the best environment for more affordable housing, followed by the PCs at 23% and the Liberals at 19%. 20% of respondents were not sure which party would be the best.
There are calls for party leaders to release more details about how they plan to address the healthcare crisis. This comes as one union is expressing concerns over possible layoffs they fear are coming to a Toronto hospital.
You will be downsizing at a time when the population is aging and growing.
CUPE sounding the alarm outside St. Michael's Hospital today, where it says Unity Health plans to eliminate 750 jobs. The union is still waiting to learn what jobs could be affected, but says that could include vacant positions. CUPE says the cuts are due to insufficient funding from the provincial government and adds it will have an impact on quality of care and wait times.
There are discussions about eliminating positions in the light of a huge deficit for this hospital. One of many Ontario hospitals in deficit because they're not being funded properly. You can't afford to cut any staff here. This place is already running on a skeleton staff.
Unity Health tells CTV News the number provided by CUPE is grossly inaccurate. It adds the budget process concludes at the end of March with a goal of strengthening its financial health while maintaining high quality of care for its patients. Emergency response times have been an issue in the city with mounting concerns over wait times for ambulances.
Now, paramedic dispatchers are speaking out amid ongoing contract negotiations with the city. CTV's Natalie Johnson has the details.
It was in December that Joanna Robertshaw was on her way to a holiday party when she encountered a young woman in medical distress near Bloor and Church.
We came upon this woman who had, fallen, seemed partially unconscious.
As others on the sidewalk rushed to her aid, Robertshaw pulled out her phone to call 911.
We were immediately put on hold for at least maybe 4 or 5 minutes. Pretty frantic, right? We must have waited 15 minutes, 20 minutes easy. For an ambulance to come. Terrifying, because, it could have been a matter of life and death.
If you have fewer people to pick up lines, then the calls get answered slower.
The union representing those emergency medical dispatchers now sounding the alarm on retention rates as it faces off with the city at the bargaining table.
It's a job that requires a lot of sacrifice. And as far as bargaining goes, our members only want the tools necessary to be able to do their jobs.
CUPE Local 79 says those tools include better pay and benefits for those call takers and dispatchers to ensure they don't leave for higher wages in the same role elsewhere. A 2024 Auditor General report found that in Toronto, the turnover rate for emergency call takers and dispatchers more than tripled from 7 to 27% between 2019 and 2023. In that same time frame, the dispatch response time for high acuity calls increased by 35%.
Poor retention is tied to longer 911 hold times.
There are many folks that are working hard. We recognize them, we respect them, and the negotiation will continue to happen.
The city telling CTV News in a statement that it remains committed to supporting the emergency medical dispatchers and call takers who perform some of the most challenging work in Canada's largest city. We are dedicated to securing a fair and equitable agreement that highlights the demanding and critical nature of their work while delivering value for Torontonians. We have highlighted to Local 79 that compensation for these staff is a key issue for the city.
They say every second matters. I'm not a doctor, but you really see that it does.
The union insisting those response times will be decided at the bargaining table. Natalie Johnson, CTV News.
Still to come, Pope Francis remains in critical condition, but the Vatican says the pontiff's health is slightly improving. We'll have more on the status of the head of the Catholic Church a little later in the newscast.
Canada is running to replace Justin Trudeau as Liberal leader will square off in the first of 2 debates tonight. Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, Karina Gould and Frank Baylis will take the stage for a French language debate in Montreal tonight. And then tomorrow the candidates will debate in English. The 2 events are the only chance Liberal supporters will have to see the 4 square off before they vote for a new leader on March 9. And for a preview of tonight's debate, we're joined by CTV's senior political correspondent, Mike Lecouteur, who is in Montreal tonight ahead of the debate. What can we expect, Mike?
Yeah, Michelle, I think you're going to expect a lot of back and forth, but not a lot of hard hits, right? I mean, this is a leadership campaign, after all, and they want to make sure that they continue to keep some sort of unity out of this. You don't want to have a party coming out of this divided in any way because of the task at hand. As you had mentioned, March 9th is when they're going to have their convention. They're going to decide who will be the next leader and, by extension, prime minister. And then after that, it's anybody's guess as to whether or not we're going into an actual election. So the Liberal Party wants to make sure that there are no divisions coming out of that. So I think we're going to see a couple of maybe jabs, but certainly no hard punches. What I'm looking for as well is to see how well everybody converses in French. We know that it is not the primary language of at least 3 out of the 4 of these candidates. Frank Baylis did represent a riding here on the island of Montreal, so he is likely going to be a little more comfortable than the other 3. I do know that Mark Carney, his team, has told me that he has spent the last 72 hours essentially immersed in French. They spent it here in Montreal, and anybody who would have to speak with him, they would have to do so in French, and he was really trying to make sure that he's putting himself in that mindset. Same thing with Chrystia Freeland. She spent the last couple of days in Toronto, but at the same time, heavy debate prep. And the other person to really keep your eye on, Karina Gould, of course, as the 4th person in this, somebody who's had a lot of experience debating in the House of Commons as the leader of the government in the House. So that is interesting to see when you consider what she has done. When I say leader of the government, in the House leader in the government, it'll be interesting to see if those debate skills shine through in this, Michelle.
Now, a big question some might have is how much of an impact will a strong debate performance have on these candidates' chances? We know that Mark Carney is the perceived front runner. Could somebody really make a dent in things?
Yeah, I think if there is that type of hit or that type of blow that somebody can't really deal with, then you may see those fortunes kind of change. But really, it's also about cementing who they want to be in the minds of Liberal voters, as it is Liberals who will be deciding on this. But from what I've heard also from some of the campaigns is they want to make sure that they are putting a personal touch on this. A lot of people know the politicians, potentially Karina Gould, you know Chrystia Freeland as the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, and you know Mark Carney as the Governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England. But do you know them as people, really? And that's what they want to try and do, put their personal touch on this. You've seen both Carney and Freeland put out ads more recently. You had Chrystia Freeland talk about growing up on a farm in Alberta. You had Mark Carney's ad that was narrated by his daughter Cleo. So I think these are all sort of leading up to really introducing these candidates to Canadians and trying to make sure that they understand who these people are and who they're going to get as the next Prime Minister.
CTV's Mike Lecouteur live for us in Montreal ahead of the debate tonight. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whoever wins the Liberal leadership will become Canada's next Prime Minister, and that means dealing with those looming American tariffs. Today, U.S. President Donald Trump insisted they will happen as planned.
The tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule. This is an abuse that took place for many, many years. And I'm not even blaming the other countries that did this. I blame our leadership for allowing it to happen. I mean, you know, who can blame them if they made these great deals with the United States?
The first set of duties are set to take effect next Tuesday. They include 25% tariffs on Canadian imports and 10% on energy products. Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister spoke to reporters today. Melanie Joly was not briefed about Trump's latest comments before taking questions, but had this to say.
We need to be able to deal with the unpredictability of President Trump. We need to be aware that the threat of tariffs is a real one and may continue for a while. And meanwhile, we need to stand strong and send a clear message that Canadians will fight back.
Joly says Canada needs to be prepared for all scenarios. Trump paused the tariffs for a month to allow time to reach what he called a final economic deal. In Rome, Pope Francis is showing slight improvement as he battles double pneumonia.
The pontiff is still critically ill, but the Vatican says he is eating normally and resumed work this afternoon at the hospital. CTV's Heather Wright reports.
Outside of Rome's Gemelli Hospital, a group of faithful sing and pray as inside Pope Francis battles double pneumonia and the onset of slight kidney failure. But in an update today, the Vatican says the pontiff's health is improving. The clinical conditions of the Holy Father, although critical, show a slight improvement, the statement reads. Even today, there were no episodes of asthmatic respiratory crises. Some laboratory tests have improved. Over the weekend, the Vatican said the Pope had experienced a respiratory crisis and was in critical condition. Last night was a good one, however, and the Pope resumed light work this afternoon with some of his secretaries.
His situation has improved since Saturday when he had that breathing crisis that required high-flow oxygen and blood transfusions.
Vatican analyst Gerard O'Connell says the health update released today was positive given what the Pope has been through, though he added setbacks are to be expected.
The pharmacological treatment they're giving him will take some time, and so nobody should expect an immediate evidence of Pope recovered. It takes time to remove pneumonia from anybody, and also from the Pope.
Pope Francis is particularly susceptible to pneumonia and other lung infections, as he underwent a partial lung removal as a young man and has been admitted to hospital multiple times since being elected Pope in 2013. Doctors have not released a prognosis for the Pope, calling his situation complex. He continues to receive oxygen therapy, but his flows have been reduced. Another positive sign. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
Still to come, combining art and chocolate. A shop on the Danforth is selling sweet treats in support of charity and to mark Black History Month. We'll have those delicious details later in the newscast.
And I'm Pat Foran. Coming up on Consumer Alert, if you're planning any major financial transactions, you have to be careful using the internet. A man was trying to transfer $750,000 to buy GICs when he got scammed, and he lost it all. I'll have my reports just ahead.
Well, here's a little bit of good news for you. Tonight's sunset time, 6 p.m. The days are getting longer, and from here on out into spring and summer, you can expect that sunset to be after 6 o'clock. Our almanac today, our seasonal average is 1 degree. We were well above that today, will be tomorrow, and really for the next couple of days. Colder air does return by the end of the week. We'll talk about the temperature trend coming up, and stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here on CTV.
Criminals are constantly trying to find new ways to steal our money, and now there's another online scam you need to be aware of.
Scammers are creating look-alike websites that will pop up in a Google search, hoping you'll hand over your personal information. Pat Foran has our story on Consumer Alert. Pat.
Thanks, Nathan and Michelle. A senior was looking to invest in GICs and did a Google search. He clicked on a website that looked like the real thing, but it was a scam site, and he ended up losing $750,000.
You thought you were on the real PC Financial website.
Of course I did.
82-year-old Walter Yamka of Oakville says last fall he had $750,000 in GICs with CIBC. He was searching for a better interest rate and typed best GIC rates into the Google search engine. He clicked on a website that appeared to be PC Financial's and called their phone number.
I said, I can come up with $750,000. He said, oh, we'll give you 6.5% on a GIC.
Yamka received documents with PC Financial letterhead and went to his bank and asked them to transfer the money, but the website was a fake and he was scammed out of $750,000.
They sent me a graph showing that in 1 year I was going to come up with $798,000. I've got zero, nothing.
Yamka says his bank should have known it was a scam, as the money was transferred to a bank account not associated with PC Financial.
The bank should confirm the receivers that they're legitimate.
PC Financial has a warning on its website about the GIC scam and told CTV News, PC Financial does not promote or sell GICs in person, over the phone, or through email. CIBC called it a very unfortunate situation and said, our team is trained to ask questions when a client is performing a large transaction, which we did in this case. If a client authorizes a transaction, it would be processed as per their request.
These scams are becoming that much more sophisticated.
Cybersecurity experts say criminals are able to create websites and documents that are almost indistinguishable from the real thing.
I think there is a responsibility on financial institutions to make sure that the money is being transferred to a legitimate account.
Yamka says losing so much money has been disastrous for his finances.
$750,000. You know how long I'd have to work to make that money?
And Yamka can still file a complaint with the Ombudsman for banking services and investments. Anyone who has a problem with a bank and is not satisfied with the outcome can use the Ombudsman to review their case. On your side, I'm Pat Foran.
If you have a consumer story idea, email us at alert@ctv.ca.
All right, we have about a month until spring. We're not there yet, but it kind of felt like we're getting close today. It's
been so cold at times this winter that being in this plus territory, it feels so warm, and it's nice to kind of not be fully bundled up. But I imagine at this stage it's not lasting forever.
It's not going to last for too long, but we're going to take this little spring preview. I think most of us would agree. You and I, Michelle, were talking about the last time it was this mild, and it was the end of December, which was a little unusual at that point in the season. We climbed all the way to 10 degrees on the 29th. But as we look through the next couple of days here, we remain above seasonal, above freezing. And today, some communities in southern Ontario almost climbed into double-digit territory. But we're not the only ones. Take a look at this. It is 9 degrees right now in Vancouver. It is 1 degree in the city of Winnipeg. And it's 4 in Edmonton. What a difference across the prairies compared to last week. This is all thanks to some mild Pacific air that is moving across the country and into southern Ontario. It is 5 degrees right now in Wyerton. It's 5 in Thunder Bay, and it's 6 in Windsor as well as Ottawa right now. Now, I do want to touch upon the winds because that's part of the reason why it's been so mild today. We've had some peak gusts at around 70 kilometers per hour, Vineland area as well as Brantford, Chatham too. The winds now, though, are starting to ease. It will be less windy as we go through the evening, overnight, and into tomorrow morning. But it's still going to be mild. In fact, overnight tonight, we're forecasting a low of 2 degrees. That's warmer than our average daytime high at this time of year. And on average, our overnight lows are typically around -7 at this time of year. So we'll be warmer than that. And then tomorrow morning, 3 degrees, afternoon about 6, and tomorrow evening, 1 degree. Now, it is possible we could get into a little bit of drizzle or shower activity tomorrow. We've got some cloud right now, but it's fairly dry across the province. Just going to pause this. Early tomorrow morning, it looks like this system is now going to miss us and remain south of the border. But west end of the GTA could get clipped with a couple of light rain sprinkles or maybe some wet snowflakes into tomorrow evening. The next significant round of active weather looks like it's going to be Wednesday night and overnight into the day on Thursday. And at this point, it looks as though we're going to get some wet snow to start, then maybe a changeover to some mixing or some rain as we're waking up on Thursday morning. And a reminder, Thursday is election day, so we'll just want to plan accordingly as you head out to cast your ballot. Temperature-wise, we're mild during the day, but it's worth mentioning that tomorrow night we're going to slip back below the freezing mark. That could lead to some slippery spots, especially with all the melting that's happening out there and the slush as well. Again, Wednesday daytime is dry. Evening, we get into some mixed precipitation, following us into at least part of the day on Thursday. Then the temperature is going to fall further, and by Friday, we get back into some sun, but we're also going to experience more typical temperatures for this time of year, about -3 for the high. Saturday, back just barely above the freezing mark, and as a result, a little bit of mixing possible once again. That's your look at the forecast for now. Michelle, over to you.
Thanks, Lindsay. And still to come, hip-hop icons Wu-Tang Clan are heading out on their final tour, which includes a stop here in Toronto. We'll have more on the group's farewell when we return. The Toronto Film Critics Association is handing out its annual awards this evening.
The stars are out walking the red carpet at the King Eddie Hotel. And that's where we find CTV's Andrea Case, who joins us now live with more on the awards. Andrea.
Nathan, Michelle, good evening. Yeah, it's quite a night here. And the critics, you know, sometimes we love them, sometimes we hate them. But one critic we always love is Johanna Schneller, who is here. She's in charge of this organization. Johanna has been critiquing films in Toronto since when?
1999.
So you've seen 1 or 2 films. Why are critics so important?
You know, I think that there's a lot of noise in the universe. There's a lot of noise in this room, and I think sometimes you can really find a voice who understands what you like and who helps explain the world to you and helps you narrow down your choices. And I think you can have a relationship with that person, and sometimes that person's a critic. And I think that sometimes we all need a little help in mediating the amount of stuff that's coming at us all the time. So if there's a person you can rely on, hopefully it's one of us.
There you go. And so a lot of films obviously came out this year, a lot of Canadian films too. Can you name your best Canadian film, your best overall film, or is that one and the same?
You mean of all time?
For this year.
Oh, I can't play favorites for this year.
Come on.
No, I'm going to say what's great about all our nominees this year, especially in this year with Canada-U.S. relations being so tense, I feel like all our nominees are movies that really could only have been made by Canadians about Canada. And I think it's that promise that we've always said, we need to tell our own stories, we need to tell our own stories for ourselves, for each other. I feel like that's really happening with the nominees this year.
Okay, so you were originally born in the U.S., but you are Canadian now. Why is it important that we continue to tell our stories, especially this time with everything that's going on?
Yeah, I think that it's, we're in such danger being next to the States, being run over by this monolith, and there's this presumption that we're all North American, we're all the same, but that's not true. There's a panoply of voices, a diversity of voices, and I feel like the best movies are the most specific movies. And so to be able to tell movies that are specifically Canadian, I think is really exciting.
Okay, so tonight at 11:30, we'll have more from the Toronto Film Critics Association Gala, and we'll find out who wins, because Joanna's not telling me anything right now. And reporting from the King Edward Hotel, I'll send it back to Michelle and Nathan.
All right, we'll have to wait. Thanks, Andrea. A country singer from Burlington is among the latest group of performers announced for next month's Juno Awards. Josh Ross is tied for the most nominations this year. He and pop singer Tate McRae both have 5. Rap duo Snotty Nose Rez Kids and previous R&B winner Akila will also perform at the March 30th gala in Vancouver. So will Palestinian-Canadian singer Nemesis and Cree and Salish singer Tia Wood.
Hip-hop icons Wu-Tang Clan have announced their final tour.
Do you know what forever means? It's no beginning or ending, babe. It doesn't stop, okay?
The tour, titled Wu-Tang Forever, the final chamber, is set to begin in Baltimore on June 6th. It will wrap up in Philadelphia July 18th, and the group is making several Canadian stops, including in Toronto on July 14th. Tickets are set to go on sale on Friday.
Grammy Award winner Roberta Flack has died.
Killing me softly with this song, killing me softly with this song, telling my whole life.
Flack was best known for the songs Killing Me Softly and The First Time Ever I Saw Your Face. She was the first artist ever to win consecutive Grammys for Best Record in 1972 and 73. In 2022, Flack announced she had ALS and was no longer able to sing. Today, her publicist released a statement saying Flack died at her home, surrounded by family. Roberta Flack was 88 years old.
Still to come on CTV News, tax season has begun. We'll have more on some of the changes you need to be aware of when we return.
We will continue to stand with Ukraine until the war is over and until Ukraine wins.
Updating our top stories, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau was among the world leaders who visited Kyiv today in a show of solidarity with Ukraine. This visit coming 3 years to the day that Russia launched its invasion. Canada has committed to send an additional $5 billion to aid in Ukraine to help Ukraine using funds seized from Russian assets. Canada will also send 25 light armored vehicles.
We are moving towards that step, and we are going to get something ready so that in the event that this does happen, which we expect it will, we're going to be better prepared.
The TTC board has passed a motion aimed at improving the transit agency's response to major winter storms. It comes as the city struggles with snow around bus and streetcar stops.
Our plan to protect Ontario will build our economy, diversify our trade, and make our province the most competitive place in the G7 to invest.
Election Day is just days away, and Doug Ford has released his full platform. He and the other party leaders were out and about across the province today promoting their vision for Ontario. Voters go to the polls to choose the province's next premier on Thursday.
Remember to keep up to date day and night at ctvnewstoronto.ca and by downloading the CTV News app. And if you have a news tip, photos, or video of breaking news, let us know.
On the markets, the dollar ended the day down a fraction, finishing at 70.10 cents U.S. West Texas Intermediate oil up, ending the day at $70.70 U.S. a barrel. And finally, the TSX made a slight gain, closing at 25,151.
The Business Report is brought to you by Canadian Western Bank, the bank built for business.
Tax season has begun with net file services now open for electronic filing. There are some changes for people to be aware of this year, including the delay of the capital gains inclusion rate. Last month, the federal government announced it would delay implementing the hike until 2026. Another change is the 2-month extension to receive a charitable donation tax receipt. The deadline to file is April 30th, but it's extended to June 16th for people who are self-employed. Charities across the country are still working to recover from the impact of the recent Canada Post strike.
New numbers suggest the job action resulted in hundreds of millions of dollars in lost donations. CTV's Scott Lightfoot reports.
For a charity like Toronto's Fred Victor, every donated dollar counts.
The holiday time and holiday gift giving period is a time when we raise about 70% of our donations throughout the years.
But last year, thanks to the Canada Post strike, donations were down.
We're probably down about 50,000 in that, but we're slowly trying to get that back.
Direct mail donations are still a staple for many Canadian charities, and with no mail service during the typically busy holiday season, some charities are now scrambling to make up. According to models used by Canada Helps, an online platform for fundraising and donations, the Canada Post strike cost Canadian charities some $266 million in lost donations.
A lot of organizations are still needing to really stretch dollars as much as possible in order to make up for that funding loss.
The organization estimates that Canadian charities would have received some $396 million in direct mail donations had there been no postal strike, but likely raised an additional $130 million in online donations. They're hoping that hearing how much charities missed out on may spur some Canadians to donate now.
And keep in mind, there are 85,000 registered Canadian charities across the country, and many of those organizations are very small and grassroots organizations like food banks and shelters, for example, and they really need those dollars.
And to encourage Canadians to give, the CRA has extended the charitable donations deadline, meaning any charitable donations made up until this Friday, February 28th, can still be claimed on your 2024 income tax return. Scott Lightfoot, CTV News.
A reminder, the CTV News at 6 podcast is available as a download every weeknight. And a special greetings to those of you listening to the newscast live on News Talk 1010.
Toronto's top stories, breaking news alerts, and watch live. Download the CTV News app.
A new initiative is combining art and chocolate for a good cause.
CTV's Jessica Smith has more on the sweet treats supporting charity and Black History Month.
A colorful collaboration is celebrating Black History Month, combining artistic expression through two very different mediums.
I really wanted to put together chocolate and art. So how we could highlight the colors of brown, the shades of brown into chocolate, and also art together.
Mary Coombs, a local chocolatier, and Benny Bing, a renowned artist, teamed up, with Bing crafting the art on the packaging and Coombs creating these sweet treats inside. The idea is to acknowledge Black History Month while also giving back to the community.
I thought, how can we use food to support food banks? And she loved the idea too, and we decided to roll it out.
The delectable limited edition collection is called Colors in Brown, with 100% of the proceeds from each box of chocolates going to support the Daily Bread Food Bank. Launched just over a week ago, Coombs says in the first 24 hours, one customer purchased the entire first round of chocolates released.
I was in tears. It was amazing. And then we are able to keep up with the production and be able to produce more for the people that really wants the collection.
People love these type of collaborations, one. Two, there is a need for these type of initiatives. And I think that's what's important.
The Colors in Brown collection comes in a 6 or 12-piece box set available in stores and online until the end of the month. Moving forward, both Bing and Coombs say they hope to continue collaborating with art and chocolate and finding new ways to give back to their community. Jessica Smith, CTV News, Toronto.
I want that.
Let's get the 12 box. Yeah, that looks delicious. Weather-wise, we have a continued warm, a little bit warmer tomorrow than it was today.
Yeah, and it's still so warm right now. And we're going to use the word warm, not just mild, because it is 5 degrees this hour in Toronto. You know, it had been a couple of weeks since we had even climbed above freezing. So this is a change of pace. There's a look at our current temperatures. It is worth mentioning that the winds are starting to ease. There's the sustained, and the gusts are now around 30 kilometers per hour, which is an improvement compared to earlier today. Tomorrow's forecast daytime high about 6 degrees, so still warm. 7-day forecast looks like this. We're around 3 for Wednesday, Thursday, back below the freezing mark into Friday. Michelle and Nathan.
Thank you, Lindsay. That's it for us, but be sure to join Omar Sachedina tonight at 11 for CTV National News, followed by Zoraida Almond with your next local newscast at 11:30.
Meantime, our coverage continues anytime on CP24 and online at ctvnewstoronto.ca.
For Lindsay Morrison and all of us here at CTV News, thanks for watching and have a great night.